He faced machete-wielding bandits in Thailand, corrupt border guards in Turkey, and arrests that could have stopped him permanently. This didn't start in a jungle. It started on a quiet street in Bethel, Ohio, where lanky, shy journalism grad Stephen M. Newman stepped off his parents' front porch on April 1st, 1983, and just kept going. Not with a sponsor, not with a support team, not even with a real plan. His rule was simple. Take what the world gives you and find out what people are really like when you're a stranger with nowhere to go. 5 miles in, the world answered immediately. His backpack, Klinger, was so brutally heavy he broke down crying on the roadside. His mom had to drive out and strip the load down on the spot. It wasn't heroic yet, it was awkward, messy, and painfully human. And that's the thing about this story. It doesn't begin with triumph. It begins with a guy realizing that his dream might actually kill him and choosing to walk anyway. His journey was supposed to be a test of human nature, drinking only water. He'd go hungry if no one gave him food. He'd sleep on the ground if no one gave him shelter. His only money came from any articles that got published, plus the occasional $1,000 deposit from his mom. And the longer he walked, the more the experiment changed. It wasn't just man versus people anymore. It was weather, borders, animals, hunger, man versus the entire planet. The journey out of Ohio was tough. He had to stop in Athens for 2 weeks because his knees were swollen up like basketballs. Washington, D.C. was the target. If he made it there, he could at least say he tried, and he made it. After nearly getting mauled in an abandoned hotel, he started sleeping lighter, boots on, bag close by, and ready to go. Still moving, he hit Boston and the Atlantic. In July of 1983, Stephen landed in Dublin, right into Ireland in the middle of the Troubles. And the moment he said what he was doing, the mood changed. A young American, alone, minimal money, walking across borders. The border guards didn't hear adventure, they heard cover story. They eyed him like he was a suspect. He talked his way through it, but the message was clear. Suspicion would be an unofficial travel partner. Stephen headed north anyway, into Northern Ireland, toward Belfast, sleeping wherever he could. One night it was above an old pub with a family of 10. Then came Larna. The Lord Mayor wanted good PR, this friendly, optimistic story about a man walking the world. Stephen was happy to play along until the door flew up in mid-meeting. A man burst in, face white. There's a bomb downstairs. The mayor rushed out. Everyone moved, and Stephen, caught between panic and politeness, squatted like an idiot, frozen in place, not sure whether to run or wait. And the bomb? It turned out to be Stephen's bag of dirty laundry on a windowsill. Across the UK, things got colder. One night he got surrounded. Stones, fists, and insults were hurled. France affected him too. In Normandy, he saw the graves of young American soldiers, teenagers, just like him. Those soldiers crossed an ocean into real terror. He chose this journey. He hit Spain, walked through the Pyrenees and down 700 miles to the Mediterranean. And as he reached the Mediterranean, the easiest part of the journey was complete. Before we get to Stephen's next destination, hit subscribe, because from here on out, this stops feeling like travel and starts feeling more like survival. In December, he crossed into Morocco and then Algeria. The coastal cliffs and forests were one of the sights he liked the most, but all that nice stuff was about to go away. Stephen crossed the Atlas Mountains under a full moon. It was winter, so even in North Africa, there was snow on the ground. Then he heard a snort. Stephen turned and found 13 wild boars staring at him. Stephen ran and scrambled up a tree to safety. The boars stayed there until morning. He spent the night exposed to the elements. By sunrise, Stephen could barely move his fingers. He had to stay in the area for 3 more days after falling ill. But that was just the opening act on this continent. Times had changed since he visited the embassy in DC. The authorities in Algeria didn't believe he was just a guy walking around the world anymore. By Algeria, arrests weren't incidents, they were his routine. Most people would think about heading home by now, but Stephen kept walking right into the Sahara Desert. Hot, vast, empty. You don't survive here without extensive preparation, plus advice from the locals. And that also meant some of the strangest food Stephen ever ate. Sour goat's milk baked in the sun for a few days, no refrigeration, then mixed with fresh camel's blood. The barbers said it would make him strong. Stephen said that swallowing it was more like throwing up in reverse. By the time he reached Tunisia, Stephen had learned what North Africa could do to a lone traveler. In Algeria, he'd been stopped, accused, and arrested more than once because officials just couldn't believe his story. So when he hit Tunis and saw the coast again, it wasn't just nice scenery. That was a reset, a place where he could breathe, regroup, and make a decision. Africa was done. In March of 1984, he headed back to Europe. He hit Italy first, living off sardines, swallowed then and there off the fishermen's nets. I don't know about you, but that's probably where I'd draw the line. Venice brought a small comfort, a new pair of boots his mom had mailed ahead. Eastern Europe was a blur. Then he walked south into Greece, running on fumes, where he spent 2 weeks working at a circus. From there, Turkey. He had heard bad things. American travelers arrested and beaten. But that didn't happen. Stephen described the Turks as one of the warmest people he met. Telephone workers in central Turkey stopped in the middle of a storm to offer him a free phone call home. Why? They realized he was the man walking around the world. One of them even climbed a pole in lightning to make that happen. Stephen then came across a village named Güneykoyu. To the locals, he was a novelty. Why would an American come to this village of all places? The chief was so impressed, he threw a festival in Stephen's honor. For one night at least, he reclined on a chair like royalty. He watched as the locals dabbed him in perfume and performed for him. And then, things took a darker turn again from there. Turkey has borders with 8 countries, but Stephen needed to keep going east, and that meant only one place: Iran. The guards were on alert when Stephen got there in October of 1984. Once again, he was detained, but this time was different. Iran was in trouble back then, and so was Turkey. It was in the middle of a civil war. The Kurdistan Workers' Party rose in revolt against the Turkish government. That conflict lasted for decades. One of the police commanders took his detention as an invitation to beat him. He mouthed off anti-US obscenities as he put the hurt on the naive American. Later, the guard watching over Stephen went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Stephen saw his chance. He climbed out a window and into the darkness. Stephen had reached an impasse. He couldn't walk any further, not into Iran and Afghanistan. Even for him, those places were too dangerous. Islamic Revolution, Khomeini, Iran-Iraq War, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, the Mujahideen. So he flew straight to Pakistan. But the border guards weren't happy to see him. They tried to convince him not to cross. At least there were no arrests this time, though. The snowy mountains in the country were one of his fondest memories. However, Stephen was worried about the militaristic tone there, and he soon got tired of the stares and the bustling crowds wanting to see him. And that was just the preview. India was also tough to get into. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had recently been assassinated by her own bodyguards. And this time, there was no convincing the reluctant border guards like he did in Pakistan. So he had to get a little creative. He borrowed a missionary's clothes to sneak into Punjab. Things were lighter in India compared to where he'd already been in Asia. He ate curdled goat's milk with the locals. He shared meals with Buddhist monks, but they couldn't stop staring. His white skin and red hair fascinated them. He couldn't wash his clothes or take a bath without hundreds of people gathering around. In one place, he attracted a crowd of 7,000. Then he called home on Christmas. His dad had died a month earlier, on Thanksgiving Day. That phone call from Turkey was the last time he would ever get to speak with his dad. Stephen was in crisis mode. The journey was taking its toll. Stephen was losing a lot of weight, but the mental and emotional toll was greater. He missed his home. He missed his family and friends. And the crowds were getting dangerous. They pushed and grabbed at him. He was afraid of being crushed. The police had to beat people back with canes. He was struggling with what to do next. Go back home and be with his grieving family? Stephen wasn't chasing records. He avoided sponsorships for the journey, so no contract to honor. But it would mean the end of everything he'd achieved so far. Troubled, he stopped at the city of Varanasi, a site holy to Hinduism. There, the bodies of the departed are cremated and scattered into the Ganges River. Then he met a wandering Tibetan Lama with his 2 disciples. They were headed for Sarnath, the place where the Buddha first taught the meaning of enlightenment. They struggled to communicate, but by now, Stephen knew how to bypass language barriers. The conversation made him want to continue. Then he followed a canal past Calcutta. It paralleled the road at first, but veered into the jungle. He thought he'd need to spend the night there, amongst the tigers and snakes, but on the shore, a mysterious man invited him into an empty house. But it wasn't as dangerous as it sounded. It was a modern guest house with plenty of room. The man was the owner, who dedicated it as a place of rest for the weary in the name of his parents. Stephen was the 13th guest, the luckiest number in India. That settled things. He'd gone too far to stop now. There would always be something magical or beautiful that he could miss if he quit. He got to Thailand in February of 1985, and soon he would have some second thoughts about that choice. The food there, often it was just fried scorpions or cockroaches. But he didn't complain. He said they tasted like lamb. But the cuisine would be the least of his problems. He walked through the jungle in the south of the country one night. It was to avoid the daytime heat, but he wasn't alone. This road was probably one of the world's most dangerous. Sure enough, bandits armed with machetes charged right at him, and all Stephen had was an umbrella. He tried to make them think it was a gun, but that didn't work. So he swung it like a club and held them off for a bit, but it was only a matter of time. One grabbed him from behind and pulled him down, swinging his machete. It hit his backpack and deflected off. He had come within an inch of losing his head, but fate intervened. Headlights startled the bandits. A pickup truck drove by. Stephen took the chance and jumped in. The driver was a local farmer who had his wife and daughters with him. The sight of a distressed American leaping at them caused panic. Fortunately, Stephen learned a lot by then. You might not speak each other's language, but people will figure out a way to know what you're saying. The family calmed down and drove him to a police station. No arrest or beating this time. They offered safety. Stephen got out of it all unscathed. The very next day, Stephen was understandably telling himself he should go home, but he met another Buddhist monk who sensed that this American needed something more than rest. Stephen was invited to stay at the nearby monastery. None of them spoke English except the leader, who Stephen met in the caves each night. That gave him the belief to cross the rest of Thailand, taking sanctuary in a new monastery each night. But he wasn't done gambling with his life just yet. By June, he was in Malaysia. Thick jungle, rubber forests, heavy heat. Walking there was slower, and everything felt more remote, isolated. In one village, he ran into a firewalk ritual, people stepping across hot coals like it was normal. Stephen said it was one of the strangest things he saw on the entire trip. Singapore was the complete opposite. Modern, fast, clean, and controlled. He didn't stay long. Singapore felt almost unreal after weeks of jungle, and that's when he realized how far from normal life he'd drifted. It was a quick stop before a major jump, leaving Asia and heading into Oceania. For Stephen, Australia didn't just mean passing through the bustling, pleasant cities on the coast. That meant walking from the north to the south coast. And that brought its own share of challenges. Some Australians beat Stephen for being an American, but not all of them. Some warned him that it was impossible to cross the Outback on foot. Stephen was at least smart enough to know it would take more than a backpack. He hauled a buggy full of supplies along with him. The Outback ground him down. He learned to eat lizards, hid in opal shafts from the scorching sun, and even got a stone for his mom, until a drunken Aussie aimed a shotgun at him and it slipped from his hands. Two strangers led him back, and against all odds, the stone was found in the middle of nowhere. He said it was one of the most terrifying experiences he had on the journey. But Stephen was a survivor. He made it to Melbourne and left Australia in June of 1986. Stephen hopped on a plane and headed to Vancouver. The last leg of his journey had begun. And that meant taking on some side quests. One of them was to Los Angeles, and there he had an audience. 3,000 people followed him from Pacific Palisades to Temescal Canyon Park. He didn't count the 6.2 miles as part of his total. Only the direct journey from Vancouver to Bethel counted. The western United States rushed past. Seattle's towers, endless skies, purple mountains, even roaming buffalo. Winter hit hard before the Continental Divide. Stephen slept in snow at negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit, but it didn't matter. Home was close. The last 5 miles cut through rural roads and snow-dusted fields in East Fork State Park, each step crunching toward the porch that had waited for him all along. Behind him stretched a world he'd crossed, every corner of it etched into his memory. On April 1st, 1987, Stephen returned to Bethel, the American flag on his back. Hundreds of people crowded around him as he walked that last mile down Main Street. At last, he made it to that same front porch he'd set off from, and into his mom's arms. 4 years, as many pairs of boots, 5 continents, 21 countries, 45 to 50 pounds lost, hundreds of families he stayed with, $4,000 spent, 21,000 miles, and 40 million steps. Stephen had a lot of trouble on his global trek, but according to him, the world is a better place than we give it credit for. There are more good people than bad, even in areas that are dangerous. Stephen Newman went where almost no one goes. How far could you go if you tried? Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on Map Pack.